I want you to picture something. A couple, both in their late 50s. She was a school administrator for 28 years. He spent his career in manufacturing. They were careful, consistent, the kind of people who always paid themselves first and never carried credit card debt into the next month. Last spring, they hit $2 million. And you know what they did to celebrate. They sat at the kitchen table, clipping coupons. 50 cents off pasta, $1 off paper towels. Then on their anniversary, their 30th, they went to dinner, and he couldn't bring himself to order the steak. $12 more than the chicken. He stared at it for a minute, then put the menu down. $2 million in the account. And he couldn't order the steak. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. The account balance says you're rich, but your nervous system is still living paycheck to paycheck. I remember the first time I crossed my own milestone. I thought I'd feel different. I thought there'd be some release valve. Instead, I spent the next week running worst-case scenarios in my head at 2 a.m. What if the market drops 40%? What if inflation doesn't slow down? What if I live to 95 and outlast all of it? Turns out, I wasn't unusual. The Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances shows that people in the top 10% of net worth by retirement age still report anxiety about money at nearly the same rates as those in the middle quintile. The number goes up. The fear doesn't go down. That gap between what you've built and what you actually feel is real, and it is not a character flaw. So the real question isn't whether you've saved enough. It is, why does reaching that number still feel like standing at the edge of something fragile? It comes down to which of the 5 levels of retirement wealth you're actually sitting in. And there is a trap right in the middle that catches almost everyone. Before we talk about the 5 levels, we need to fix something most retirement calculators quietly get wrong. Meet John. He is 62, just retired from a 35-year engineering career in the Bay Area. When he pulls up his net worth on paper, $1,200,000. He feels okay about that number. Solid even. Then you ask him how much cash he actually has available to live on. $300,000. The other $900,000. It is sitting in his house. Paid off, beautiful, worth every penny. But it doesn't pay his electric bill. It doesn't cover his wife's prescriptions. It didn't stop him from picking up 2 shifts a week at a hardware store because, quote, just to keep busy. He tells people he likes staying busy, but the truth is, the math forced his hand. This is what I'd call the paper wealth trap. Your net worth on paper looks one way. Your retirement net worth, the number that actually matters, looks completely different. Here is a simple formula worth running right now. Take your total net worth. Subtract the value of your primary residence. Subtract your vehicles. What is left is your true retirement net worth, the assets that can actually generate income or be converted to cash without uprooting your life. For John, that math goes $1,200,000 minus $900,000 in home equity minus about $40,000 in cars. His true retirement net worth is closer to $260,000. That is a level 2 problem wearing a level 3 mask. And this isn't rare. If you feel house rich but cash poor, you aren't alone. Census data shows most Americans your age own their homes free and clear, which sounds like good news until you realize that home equity is one of the least liquid assets you can hold in retirement. You can't eat equity. You can't use it to pay a $4,000 dental bill on a Tuesday afternoon. I've sat across from someone doing exactly that, sweating over a dental invoice in the living room of a $1,500,000 home that was paid off free and clear. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The trade-off is invisible until it isn't. Every year you carry that equity without a plan. Inflation quietly erodes the purchasing power of your actual liquid assets. The house stays valuable. Your cash cushion gets thinner. Now try this. Take your total net worth, subtract the house and the cars, and drop that number in the comments. What percentage of your net worth is actually liquid and working for you? Nobody is judging. It is just worth knowing. Once you strip away that illusion, you can finally see clearly where you stand and which of the 5 levels you're actually operating from. Level 1 is where the math is the most unforgiving. True retirement net worth under $100,000. For most people here, Social Security isn't a supplement, it is the whole plan. The average monthly benefit in 2026 sits around $1,900. That is roughly $22,800 a year. If you are in a mid-sized city, that covers rent, utilities, and groceries. Barely. There is no cushion for a transmission going out, a tooth that needs pulling, or a week in the hospital. I think about a guy I'll call Ray. Spent 30 years as a machinist. Good at his job, reliable, the kind of man his shop couldn't function without. But when he started working in the 1980s, his employer didn't offer a 401k. By the time those became standard, he was already in his 40s and behind on everything else. Mortgage, kids, the usual. He retired at 65 with about $60,000 in savings and a Social Security check. Then came a cardiac event. The surgery went well. The co-pays and follow-up costs didn't. Medicare covered the bulk of it, but the out-of-pocket gap, co-pays, deductibles, follow-on prescriptions, drained most of what he had in less than 2 years. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't irresponsible. He just had no room for error, and life didn't give him any. The trade-off at level 1 is brutal and simple. Every dollar spent today is a dollar that can't absorb tomorrow's emergency. There is no redundancy. Level 2 looks different. True retirement net worth between $100,000 and $500,000. This is where people start feeling like they've made it, and that feeling is exactly what makes this level dangerous. You have something, a 401k balance, maybe a small pension, Social Security coming. You've done better than most of the people you grew up with. But there is a specific risk sitting right at the edge of this level that most people have never heard of, and it can quietly derail a retirement portfolio right out of the gate. It is called sequence of returns risk. Think about it like this. You retire with $500,000 and you plan to withdraw $25,000 a year to cover what Social Security doesn't. Normal plan. Then the market drops 20% in year 1, which has happened and will happen again. Your portfolio doesn't just lose $100,000 on paper. You also pulled out $25,000 to live on while it was falling. Now you are working from a base of roughly $375,000 instead of $500,000. Even if the market fully recovers the next year, you've permanently altered the trajectory. The math doesn't reset just because the index does. That hole doesn't fill back in the same way. The difference between someone who tracks their monthly expenses closely and someone who doesn't isn't small at this level. It can be the difference between staying in their own home at 80 or moving in with their kids at 75. Not because one person was smarter, because one person had a clearer picture of their actual floor. That is the whole game at level 2. Know your floor. Protect it in year 1. Nobody has a crystal ball for the market's first year, including me, which is why having cash matters. But here is what is strange. That fear of running out, that low-grade financial anxiety that runs underneath everything, it doesn't stop at level 2. It follows people up the ladder, even into level 3, where by any reasonable measure they've already won. Level 3 is where the financial victory is real, and the psychological trap is the deepest. True retirement net worth between $1,200,000 and $3 million. You've done the hard part, decades of discipline, deferred gratification, the whole thing. By any objective measure, you are in the top tier of retirement readiness in this country. And yet this is the level where I see the most quiet suffering. Not suffering from poverty, suffering from permission. Tom and Linda are both retired educators. He taught high school physics for 31 years. She was a district curriculum coordinator. Between their pensions, Social Security, and a 403b they've been contributing to since the early 1990s, they have $2 million sitting in their retirement accounts. Liquid, accessible, growing. Last year, their daughter mentioned a trip to Italy. The whole family, kids, grandkids, 2 weeks in Tuscany. Tom and Linda wanted to go. They talked about it for 3 months. Then they quietly backed out. The reason? They didn't want to pull $10,000 from the portfolio. $10,000 from a $2 million account. They ended up staying home, feeling a quiet sense of regret while scrolling through the family photos. That account has become something they guard rather than use. A number on a screen that makes them feel safe as long as they don't touch it. The moment they spend from it, something in the brain registers it as loss, even when the math says otherwise. Here is what the math actually says. Even with conservative math, a $2 million portfolio can safely generate about $80,000 a year. If Tom and Linda's pensions and Social Security already cover $60,000 in basic living expenses, they have approximately $80,000 per year in additional withdrawal capacity they are not using. That is $80,000 a year sitting untouched, quietly losing ground to inflation. Not because they can't afford to spend it, because they can't bring themselves to. This is the accumulation to decumulation switch. For 30 or 35 years, every good financial instinct told them to save more, spend less, protect the principal. That wiring doesn't just turn off at 62. It calcifies. And what was a survival mechanism during the working years becomes a cage in retirement. For many years, I told people the hard part was saving. I was wrong. Saving is a skill you can build with enough repetition and enough automation. The harder skill, the one nobody really prepares you for, is learning to spend without guilt. Learning to treat the portfolio as the tool it was always meant to be, not as the scoreboard. The trade-off here is one of the cruelest in personal finance. The years between 62 and 72, what financial planners sometimes call the go-go years, are when people are mobile, relatively healthy, and still have the energy for the experiences they spent decades deferring. Miss that window, and you don't get a second one. The money will still be there at 80. The knees might not be. And the final irony, a significant portion of that carefully preserved $2 million will eventually transfer to their children, who will be in their 50s by then, at the peak of their own earning years, with their own 401ks already funded. The money arrives exactly when it is needed least. If you saw yourself somewhere in that story, that is worth paying attention to. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the psychological side of retirement spending is something I am going to keep coming back to, and it doesn't get enough airtime anywhere else. Once you work through that psychological barrier, the rules of the game change again. Because at level 4 and 5, the enemy isn't fear of spending. It is something with sharper teeth. At level 4, the fear of running out is essentially gone. True retirement net worth between $3 million and $15 million. Level 5 is above that. At these levels, the portfolio survives almost any market scenario, any inflation cycle, any reasonable lifespan. The math is settled, but settled math doesn't mean settled life. The enemy just changes shape. Take someone like David, senior vice president at a logistics company, retired at 64 with $5 million, most of it in a traditional 401k he had been maxing out since 1994. He felt secure. He was secure. What he didn't fully account for was a law called the Secure Act 2.0, which updated the required minimum distribution age to 75 for people born after 1960. That sounds like a gift. More time for the money to grow untouched. Except David's account kept compounding inside a tax-deferred vehicle for over a decade past retirement. By the time the IRS required him to start pulling money out, those mandatory distributions were large enough to push him into the highest federal tax bracket, and trigger what is known as the IRMAA cliff. IRMAA is basically a Medicare surcharge, and it operates on a cliff. Cross the income line by just $1, and your Medicare premiums can spike by thousands for the year. David didn't see it coming because nobody had modeled it for him. He had spent 35 years optimizing for accumulation. Nobody had run the distribution side of the math. The trade-off at this level is specific and expensive. The money you save by managing your own portfolio, avoiding advisory fees, keeping things simple, can be dwarfed by what the IRS quietly takes because you didn't have a Roth conversion strategy or a trust structure in place. We are talking 30% to 40% of an inherited portfolio gone to taxes before your kids see a dollar of it. Not because the tax code is predatory, because it rewards people who planned around it and doesn't apologize to those who didn't. Level 5 adds another layer. Above $15 million, the conversation shifts almost entirely to family dynamics and legacy architecture. Who controls what? How assets transfer without triggering estate taxes? How to give meaningfully to the next generation without removing the incentive for them to build something of their own. These are genuinely hard problems, just a different category of hard than running out of money. Regardless of which level you are at, whether you are in survival mode at level 1 or navigating RMD's exposure at level 4, there is always one lever that moves the needle more than anything else. And that is what we are getting to next. Here is the thing nobody says out loud. Moving up a level rarely requires earning more money. Most of the time, it requires moving the money you already have. Karen and her husband had been level 2 for 12 years. 2 incomes, decent savers, but most of their net worth was locked in a 4-bedroom house they had raised their kids in. The kids were gone. The bedrooms were empty. The house sat there, appreciated, untouched, a $420,000 asset that generated exactly 0 income and cost them $14,000 a year in property taxes, maintenance, and insurance. It wasn't an easy emotional choice to pack up those memories, but they downsized. They moved into a smaller place, pocketed roughly $400,000 in freed equity after costs, and moved that into a diversified portfolio weighted toward dividend-paying stocks and short-term bonds. That portfolio now generates about $18,000 a year in passive income before they touch a single dollar of principal. That one decision moved them from level 2 to level 3. Not a raise. Not a lucky stock pick. A restructure of what they already owned. This is what I mean by cash flow reorientation. The lever isn't always income. Sometimes it is converting a dormant asset, a paid-off house, an oversized car, a savings account earning less than inflation, into something that actually works while you sleep. I don't have a magic pill for this. I have never pretended to, but I have watched enough people go through this process to know that optimizing what you already have consistently outperforms chasing something new. Better return, lower risk, and no dependence on market timing. The alternative isn't neutral. If you don't redirect that dormant capital today, inflation and taxes will redirect it for you, just not in a direction you would choose. What this all boils down to is this. Your total net worth and your true retirement net worth are 2 different numbers. Knowing which one you are actually living off of is the first honest step. And once you know where you stand on the 5 levels, really stand, not on paper, you can stop making decisions from the wrong map. The second shift is harder. It is psychological. Moving from accumulation to actually using what you built. That transition doesn't happen automatically, and it doesn't happen just because the number is big enough. The money is just there to fund the life. Don't let it become the other way around. If this video helped clarify something, even just one number, one reframe, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The Wes investor community is here for the long haul, and there is a lot more ground to cover together.